"Don't come for Christmas," my mom said gently. "We'll pretend we don't know you," my brother added. I didn't argue. But when his girlfriend saw my photo at the party, she broke up with him on the spot because she knew exactly who I was. I've been looking forward to it. Not in a big dramatic way, not like I had a countdown app or anything, but I cleared my schedule, bought ingredients for that rosemary stuffing they always ask for, even though they never remember I'm the one who makes it. Got a gift for everyone, including my brother, who once said gift cards were soulless and then handed me one for 3 Christmases straight. I even bought a new sweater, forest green, simple, the kind you wear when you're trying to look festive without trying too hard. I had a bag packed and sitting by the door. I was ready. So when my phone rang 3 days before Christmas and I saw my brother's name, I assumed it was to coordinate carpooling or to ask if I could bring extra napkins. Something normal. I wish. "Hey," he started, that performative, casual tone he uses when he's about to say something awful and wants you to thank him for how nicely he phrased it. "So listen, Sienna's coming to Christmas, right? Tina, the new girlfriend, a photographer / ceramist / something, in Soho. I'd seen her tagged in exactly one family photo, and even in that, she looked like she glowed under better lighting than the rest of us. She's very into energy," he continued, "like the vibe of a room really matters to her." I stayed quiet. "And you know, with your work, sometimes it's kind of heavy." There was the word, heavy. Not, "You're a brilliant doctor who works with elderly patients and improves quality of life where others give up," just heavy. The human equivalent of a wet towel on his Instagram aesthetic. "I just think for her sake," he said, "it might be better if you sat this one out. It's nothing personal." Which is always code for, "It's absolutely personal. We just don't want to hear you complain about it." I think I mumbled something like, "Okay." I don't really remember. My ears were ringing a little. An hour later, my mom called, because of course she did. That's the choreography. "Honey," she began, soft and sweet, like she wasn't about to lob a grenade at my chest. "We're just trying to make things easy for everyone. You know how sensitive she is, and Dorian's really trying with this one. This one, like she was a rescue dog he was hoping wouldn't pee on the carpet. If you come, it could cause confusion," she said. "Honestly, we probably wouldn't answer the door, just so everyone stays comfortable." Right, because my presence would ruin the comfort of people who didn't even want me there. I didn't yell, didn't ask how they could say that to me. I just said, "Okay," and hung up. Then I sat down on the couch, stared at the blinking cursor on my laptop screen, and opened my banking app instead. Mortgage payment, canceled. Car loan top-up, canceled. Home maintenance slush fund, frozen. The plumbing leak I paid for last fall? Suddenly not my problem. The car battery I replaced last spring? Good luck next time it stalls. They wouldn't feel it right away. That's the thing about being silently useful. No one notices until the silence costs them something. And I was done being useful. I didn't post about it, didn't text anyone. I just turned off the tree lights in my apartment, packed away the gifts I had wrapped, and went to bed early, alone, on Christmas Eve. I thought that would be the worst part. Then the call came. It was the day after Christmas, mid-morning. I was in leggings and an oversized hoodie, eating a piece of cold toast and trying to convince myself I was fine. My mom's name flashed across the screen. I didn't pick up. She called again, then a text. "Can you answer? You've done enough damage already." My stomach dropped. A few minutes later, my Aunt Sharon, the only relative who still sends birthday cards, called me. I answered. This time her voice was hushed, almost stunned. "What happened yesterday?" she asked. "They're saying you ruined Christmas, but you weren't even there." I blinked. I ruined it. "Something happened with Sienna," she said. "She left early. There was yelling, and then your name came up." That's all she knew. No details, just enough to light a match in my brain. And suddenly I couldn't stop wondering, what did Sienna see? What did she hear? Why was I the one being blamed, again, for a disaster I hadn't even been invited to? I stared at my cold toast, and for the first time since that sweater went back on its hanger, I smiled. It's funny how family stories always sound like fairy tales when someone else tells them. Ask anyone in my family and they'll say Dorian was the golden boy. Brilliant, talented, sensitive. The miracle baby who came late after years of trying. I was the firstborn, the practice round. The quiet one who read too much and smiled too little. From the start, he could do no wrong. When he was 6 and drew on the living room wall with a permanent marker, it was expressive. When I broke a ceramic bowl trying to help set the table, it was clumsy, careless. You need to pay more attention. When he came home from school with a participation ribbon, it went on the fridge for a week. When I brought home a perfect report card, it went in a drawer. Once I left it on the kitchen table, hoping they'd ask about it. They didn't. They liked to tell people Dorian was artsy, that he had an eye for color, that he felt things deeply. I once found my sketchbook in the recycling bin, under a stack of grocery ads. They said they thought it was scrap paper. I got straight into medical school. No gap year, no second tries. I remember walking into the dining room with my acceptance letter. My mom said, "Wow, that's intense. You'll have to be really careful not to get burned out." Meanwhile, Dorian switched majors 3 times and ended up dropping out halfway through his 3rd year to pursue creative direction. He moved back home. They turned my old room into his studio. That year, they threw him a party, a life recentering party with balloons. I wasn't invited. There's a photo that lives in a frame on my parents' hallway table. It's Dorian at age 23, holding a paintbrush and smiling like he just cured cancer. My mom once told a neighbor he was born to lead with vision. That same week, I published a paper in a medical journal about early intervention in memory loss. No one in my family mentioned it. They used to call me too serious. "You're always working," they'd say. They never asked what I was working on. So when Christmas came and Sienna walked into that house, glowing, smiling, floating in like the second coming of Snow White, I wasn't surprised they tried to protect the illusion. And I wasn't shocked to hear how they talked about me. Aunt Sharon told me more in pieces, quietly, cautiously, like she knew it would sting but figured I deserved to know. They called me difficult, said I never really got along with people, said I buried myself in dark things, that I lived in hospitals and talked like a robot. My brother apparently joked that I was basically death's intern. Someone else chimed in that I probably kept syringes in my purse, that I couldn't go 10 minutes without talking about disease. They laughed. They passed around wine. Someone said she'd have made the party feel like a funeral. And then Sienna saw my photo. That part they didn't explain, only that the room went quiet, that Sienna went pale, that she put her glass down and asked, "Is this the sister you told me about?" What followed, they didn't say, but I got the picture. For once, someone saw through the script, saw what I'd been trying to ignore for years, and the performance ended early. That's how I ruined Christmas, by not being there. 3 days passed before I got the voicemail. It wasn't from my mother or my brother, or even my father, who only ever calls when he needs help understanding text stuff, also known as email. It was from Sienna. Her voice was quieter than I remembered from that one Instagram video they sent me weeks ago. Less polished, less floaty, more human. "Hi, I'm so sorry to reach out like this. I got your number from your aunt. I needed to say something. I hope that's okay." There was a pause, a long one. "I didn't know. I really didn't know who you were, but I recognized your photo. You treated my grandmother Alma years ago. She still talks about you. You didn't give up on her when every other doctor did. You were kind. You were present. You changed everything." Another pause. "I'm sorry about what happened and what was said about you. I had no idea. I just wanted you to know that. I left because I couldn't pretend anymore." I listened to it twice, then again. And I'm not going to lie, I sat there in my kitchen, legs pulled up to my chest, and cried into a tea towel that smelled faintly like rosemary and bleach. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in forever, someone saw me without being told how to see me first. Sienna didn't ask for anything, didn't suggest we talk again. She just acknowledged it, and that felt more healing than 100 apologies from my own family ever could. But of course, they couldn't let that silence last. 2 days after the voicemail, I got a new call. This one from my mother. I almost let it go to voicemail. I should have. She didn't start with hello, just launched right in like we'd been mid-conversation. "I don't know what you said to her, but now your brother's a mess. She's blocked his number, she won't talk to him, and now she's posted something online about being treated like garbage by the family of a woman she admires." There was a sound in the background. Glass clinking. Either she was pacing in the kitchen or pouring herself a crisis glass of wine. Probably both. "She tagged your photo," she added, like I'd committed a war crime. I let her talk. Eventually she reached the point. "We need you to speak to her. Just clarify that there was no bad intention, that she misunderstood." Right. As if I was the PR department. Now the damage control specialist for the family that couldn't be bothered to let me through the front door. She's ruining your brother's future, my mom said, quieter now. His name is being dragged in those art circles she's part of. You know, all that stuff in New York. He's being blacklisted. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of the absurdity. They'd spent decades trying to make me invisible. Now the consequences of that invisibility had finally hit something they cared about, their image. I didn't respond, just said I'd think about it. I didn't think about it. I was too busy reading Sienna's post. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't cruel, it was just honest. She wrote about the woman who saved her grandmother's life, about how she'd gone to Christmas expecting warmth and connection, and instead found a family who made jokes at that same woman's expense. A family who painted her as cold, clinical, hard to love. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Her words were calm but sharp, thoughtful but unforgiving. By the end, she wrote, "Some people hide cruelty behind polite smiles and holiday lights, but the moment I saw that photo, I remembered what real kindness looks like, and it wasn't anyone sitting at that table." It went viral in her circles. I saw the likes, the shares, the comments, and for once, none of them were saying I was difficult or depressing or heavy. They were saying I mattered. That same night, I got a text from my father. Just one line. "You need to fix this." As if I was the one who broke it. I didn't respond. The next morning, I got another call, this time from Dorian. I debated answering, but curiosity won. His voice was rough, like he hadn't slept. "I didn't know she knew you," he said. "You could have just said something." I stared at the wall. "You told me not to come. I was trying to protect the vibe." "The vibe," I repeated. He sighed. "You know what I mean." "I really don't." Another pause. "She's serious," he said eventually. "She ended things. I don't think it's fixable. She said the way we talked about you made her sick." I didn't say anything. He went on, "She blocked me, and now other people are reaching out saying I'm toxic, like I'm some kind of villain." "Imagine that," I said dryly. Then he tried it. The guilt card. "I always thought you were fine, that you didn't need anything from us, that you didn't want to be part of things. I didn't know it hurt you." I stared out the window. "You didn't want to know," I said. Silence, then. "So you're not going to help?" I smiled to myself. I think the truth helped all by itself. He hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't gloat. It just felt done. A few hours later, Aunt Sharon called again. "Sienna reached out to me," she said. "She asked for your mailing address. Said she wanted to send something." I hesitated, then gave it to her. The letter arrived 3 days later, handwritten, thick paper, ink slightly smudged in places. Inside, she told me her grandmother still did yoga twice a week, still walked to the market, still told the story of the young doctor who looked her in the eye and said, "You're not done yet." She thanked me not just for saving her grandmother, but for showing her what real strength looked like. I kept that letter framed. I even hung it just beside my desk, where I do my end-of-day notes. And as I filed another patient update, I realized something. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Not to them, not to anyone. I didn't save a life for praise. I didn't cancel payments for revenge. I didn't ruin Christmas to make a point. But the truth had its own timing, and this time it showed up right on schedule. They say families come together in times of crisis. Mine came together to draft an email. It arrived 3 days after Sienna's letter. Subject line, "Let's reset things." It was signed by all three of them, my mom, my dad, and Dorian. A united front, like they were submitting a group project. The tone was what you'd expect from people who think apologies are a form of negotiation. They didn't actually say sorry, not directly. Instead, they acknowledged that emotions had run high and regretted the way things may have been perceived. Which, translated from emotionally avoidant to English, means, we still think we're right, but we're worried about the fallout. The email went on to say that the whole Christmas situation had gotten out of hand, and perhaps everyone could benefit from a fresh start. They suggested a family brunch, neutral territory, open-hearted discussion. Also, and this was buried about 3 paragraphs down, they'd appreciate if I reached out to Sienna and asked her to delete her post, because apparently brunch was conditional on me restoring Dorian's reputation. I didn't respond. Not to that. Not even with a sarcastic gif. I waited, because if there's one thing my family is terrible at, it's patience. And right on cue, the escalation arrived. First, it was my dad calling one of my colleagues, someone he'd met at a fundraiser once, and asking if he could put in a word about how I'd been acting a bit emotionally unstable lately. Yes, He tried to gaslight a hospital administrator into thinking his adult daughter was in need of supervision because his son got dumped. Thankfully, the administrator called me immediately, horrified, and apologized. So that Bridge lit a match and walked away. Next came the group text to extended family, cherry-picked versions of events. No mention of me being excluded, no mention of what was said about me. Just a lot of, "She's tearing the family apart," and "We're so worried about her mental state." It almost worked. I got 2 pity texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. One even offered me a yoga retreat voucher. Just in case you're going through something. The final move was the most desperate, a visit. I was home on a Sunday afternoon when I heard the knock. I peeked through the peephole and, of course, it was them, my parents and Dorian. I opened the door and leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "We just want to talk," my mom said. I let them in, not because I wanted to, just because I needed to hear how low they'd go. They sat down like this was some kind of intervention. My father spoke first. "We raised you. We paid for everything growing up. You're only where you are because of our sacrifices." Ah, yes, the old investment argument. My mother followed up with, "We've made mistakes, but you've punished us enough. It's time to stop." And then Dorian, "You're the only one who can fix this. She'll listen to you." I let it hang for a moment. Then I stood and walked to my desk. I pulled open the drawer, where I kept all the records, payments I'd made, repairs I'd covered, the mortgage support, the car fund, the time I loaned them, $3,000, for that emergency dental surgery no one ever thanked me for. I laid out the printouts like evidence in a courtroom. "You want to talk about who owes what?" I said. "Because I can calculate interest if you'd like." My dad went red. "That's not what this is about." "Of course not," I said. "Because when I give, it's expected. But when I say no, suddenly I'm ungrateful." My mother's voice broke a little. "We're family. And you made it very clear I wasn't invited to be part of it," I said. "You excluded me, mocked me, lied about me. And now that the optics are bad, suddenly I matter again." Dorian stood. "She's still in love with me. That's why she did this. It wasn't about you." I blinked. Took everything in me not to laugh. But instead I just tilted my head. "You really think she dumped you because she couldn't resist you?" I asked. "Not because you let a room full of people make fun of the doctor who saved her grandmother's life?" Silence. "That's right," I said. "I know now. She told me, sent me a letter. Turns out people remember who shows up when it matters." My mom looked down. My dad clenched his jaw. Dorian sat slowly, like he finally realized the show was over. "I'm not asking for anything," I said, quieter now. "But I'm also not offering anything anymore. Not forgiveness, not money, not silence." They left without another word. That was 2 months ago. Since then, I've heard through Sharon that Dorian moved in with a friend, that his freelance gigs dried up, that his name doesn't open doors the way it used to. My parents put the house up for sale, couldn't afford the mortgage. Apparently they're renting now. A smaller place, less guest rooms. I didn't do any of that. They did. They built a legacy on favoritism, disrespect, and convenience. And when it crumbled, they looked around for someone to blame. This time I didn't step in to fix it, and that's what made all the difference. The other day, I walked into my office and found a small package on my desk. No note, just a box of chocolates and a sticky note with a tiny doodle of a sun. I knew who it was from, and for once, I let myself feel it. Peace. Not revenge. Not righteousness, just the quiet relief of having nothing left to prove. I don't know if they'll ever apologize, but I know I don't need them to. Because I built a life they still don't understand, and it's the one place they can't follow me into. Not because I locked them out, but because they never learned how to knock. It's been a year now. I've blocked their numbers, their emails, even the group chat I was never really part of. Not out of spite, just peace. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is enforce a silence they can't interrupt. I didn't go no contact overnight, but once I saw things clearly, I never looked back. Have you ever had to cut someone off, not out of anger, but because they left you no choice? Tell me in the comments. I'm listening. And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe.